we think about strategy, when we think about, advising leaders on making important decisions for the future. So we thought we'd pull a few out and we'd hone in on a couple of things that we think are really, we call this a concentrated best of episode, if you like. So. Welcome back to the advisory deck. We're sitting on the deck on a beautiful summer's day, sun shining out here.
Finally, it's warm.
It's La Nina, farmers are happy, but it's also nice to see some sunshine. I'm joined once more by James McGill. How are you, James?
I'm good, Troy, thank you.
Good to hear. So these are riffs and conversations that we have over the last 23 episodes of the advisory deck that we've now got up on YouTube, talking about leadership and business concepts we think are pertinent and important for business owners and leaders to consider in 2021. As we move out of this really weird year, we thought this was a great time with 23 episodes in the can to have a bit of a retrospective conversation and just, I guess, highlight some of the key themes that, regardless of the topic that we ended up on, we kept coming back to these few themes because they just dominate when we think about strategy, when we think about, advising leaders on making important decisions for the future. So we thought we'd pull a few out and we'd hone in on a couple of things that we think are really, we call this a concentrated best of episode, if you like. So James, we've covered a lot of ground, right? A lot of different topics.
We have. I think we've explored topics when we started this. It's one of those COVID-inspired activities, right? We said, well, we're going to have some time because people aren't going to the office and clients aren't doing things, and the world and the Australia is shutting down. So we'll do something that we haven't done before. And I think that was one of the themes that came through is to do something where, the reality is when we'll talk about strategy sessions and planning, but the reality is that no one knows what's going to happen tomorrow or next week or next month or next year, and certainly not in 3 or 5 years. We don't even know who the president of the US is going to be tomorrow, do we? I think that's still undecided. So there's a lot of uncertainty in the world, and one of the topics that came through again and again when we spoke to business owners was the idea of you need to keep on doing things and trying things and doing something, just like we've done with this, and you don't quite know where it's going to go. So I think there's a bravery in being a business owner about rolling the dice, especially when times are tough, because that's how you keep going, and you don't quite know where that's going to go.
No.
I think that's the reality. You don't quite know if you change something what it's going to mean. But that do something, you can't sit back and wait for someone else.
No.
Because if you do something, it might lead to a conversation, it might lead to a new client. I was at an event last night with Martin Hazy, who's ex-Lord Mayor of Adelaide, and the current CEO of Business SA that represents, I think it's like 3,000 small to medium businesses. And he spoke about his story, and his story was founding a clothing chain back in the 90s, YouthWorks, yeah. And he said one of the secrets to his success was that when everything was going really well for the company, he would change how they worked. He said it was almost counterintuitive that you would change when things are going well. And he said the reality is that if you don't keep on changing and doing something, then other people catch up, customers get bored, and before you know it, things aren't doing well, and then you're scrambling to keep up again. So I think even that insight is one that came through outside of these sessions, where you just have to keep on doing something, no matter how tough it is. You just go, right, if I don't do anything, I'm going to wither and die. You're either growing or you're dying, basically. So that's the first theme that captures my mind looking back at the 20 plus episodes we did. How about you?
One that just continued to bubble to the surface, and I heard these words when I asked Throw to you to do a little bit of a wrap up time and time again, was customer experience.
Yeah.
Customer experience, that any decision made thinking really hard about what flavour you want your customer going away, thinking about you and your business and what it is that you're offering to them, trying to be sticky and memorable in their mind for the right reasons, to earn their sense of delight, to earn their word of mouth, to earn their repeat business, and just help amplify and make your life easier at getting that next customer. Time and time again, regardless of what we discussed, that came out as a key message. So I think for me, in any sort of thinking and planning process you're going through for 2021 and beyond, if that's not at the heart of your decision making, I think you're making a mistake. I would absolutely place that at the core.
And we don't do it enough, do we? I think the theory would be if we describe the advisory deck, these episodes, as being a startup, we're trying to figure out, while Troy and I find this interesting, and when we come up with ideas, we have conversations off camera about a number of things we can do. The reality is we're doing this with an interest to see whether it leads to something. We're not quite sure what it is, but in a way we're creating a minimum viable product. And we're trying to do that without spending a lot of time and energy and seeing whether that adds some value to people. Part of our next step is going to be going to potential clients and saying, do these add value? If they don't add value, then what's the point in doing them? And we can do this for fun, but why would we record it if it's just for fun? And I think that's that customer experience piece again of saying, sitting here in the office, in a boardroom and saying, oh, we're going to build these amazing products or offer this great service, and making those decisions based on what you think sitting around the boardroom table or the kitchen table at home, without going to your target market and having a conversation with them, you're making decisions that are half informed. And I think that's your point, is that customer experience, those customer conversations. The companies that do it well are those that continually talk to their customers and ask for feedback and check the market, because you want to go where your customers want to be.
Yes.
I know there's a theory of, I'm not sure if it's proven, Henry Ford's comment about, if I asked my customers what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. Like, sometimes you have to go beyond that. The reality is, for most companies, they're not taking customers from a horse to a car.
No.
Right?
And they're not dichotomous things either, trying something new and thinking really, really hard, or asking what your customers want. There is that sort of iterative, got to keep testing, but got to keep checking in. Got to, no, that didn't work, okay, change gears. That one is resonating, that one is working, all right, how do we double down on that as well? So I think it's finding that right, but the balance of those two things. What else sticks out for you to come from these sort of conversations?
Because it's 2020, right? And the COVID year, I think the business model, I mean, look, the world is changing rapidly because of technology. It's becoming harder if you're a smaller company to compete locally only, because people can go on the web, right? And delivery times are getting better, so they can buy a product and have it shipped from somewhere faster to your door now than you could have 12 months ago. And Amazon's about to build another massive warehouse in Melbourne. Now, they'll have products sitting in Melbourne that can be, assuming Australia Post deliver it quickly, you could order online and it's going to be there tomorrow. Right? That takes away one of the last barriers where people are saying, well, I want something tomorrow, it's going to take me 5 days or 10 days from overseas. That's not going to be the case anymore. So I think that your business model has again come up, and whether we talk to people like Ambra or talk to other business owners, being really clear about your business model and not what you want it to be because it's what it was 6 months ago or 12 months ago. It's what is going to be successful because what your customers want. Critically, what your competitors are doing. I'm not saying you've got to follow their competitor or always beat them. We can only be the only company doing that. The reality is very few companies are the only ones doing something. But I think that awareness of your business model, how you make money, how you sell, how you wrap everything up, it can be really hard to be subjective about that if you're sitting around the table with the team that's doing it all the time. So I think, again, the companies that seem to do it well, especially through a tough time, are those that are able to step back, whether they bring in consultants, whether they just have that ability culturally to challenge, but they keep that business model evolving. You're not throwing it out and starting again every year, but you're evolving. And I think that theme has come through again and again as well.
And we pulled up to that a couple of times in the sort of do it for me versus do it yourself kind of episode, where, what's that evolving balance of, serve it up on a silver platter versus enable your customers to satisfy themselves, to self-select in advance, or to add some bells and whistles on at the end. And so I think you're right, constantly testing your business model, your path to market, how that all comes together to get what I guess for me is probably the sort of the fourth key point to come from these, to get your value proposition into the market in the right way. And I think value proposition keeps coming up, certainly in the number of strategic planning processes which are now coming back online, which I've been facilitating in the last month or two. It's really it's a fascinating sort of, we've been honing in on it, but senior leaders are saying we need to think really hard about how clear our value proposition is, how well we're articulating it. Does it need to evolve to address the changing needs and wants and capabilities of the marketplace as well? And just to be really, really clear, value proposition is not your list of products and services. It's the entire way you solve the problems, meet the needs of the client cohort that you are most interested in, right?
Do you think enough companies, enough leadership teams understand value proposition from the work that you do, understand it and then understand how to communicate it properly internally and externally?
No, I think they're coming to that realisation and saying we need to be clearer about this, because if all we are now is a warehouse of products and services and we put out a website and we have some suppliers that give us some stuff, that's not enough. It's 2021, you've got to be more thoughtful and dynamic. And I guess, with the proliferation of choice that customers have, if you can't very clearly articulate, why we're the best choice in this crowded field for you, for these reasons, and it's a grab bag of things, then you're behind the eight ball. And so I think it is coming to the fore now.
It's a tough one, isn't it? Because you often look at companies and you think, why is that one company doing really, really well? And you may not be able to put your finger on it. Sometimes it might be luck. More realistically, it's because they've spent a lot of time behind the scenes figuring things out. And again, because it's 2020, I think about the 4 or 5 companies that changed the way that people communicate in the last 6 months. Right? And Zoom is the one that now everyone talks about, that I think lost 20% of their share price last night because Pfizer came out with a vaccine. So, let's ignore that. But Zoom were late to the market. Skype's been there for a long time and never really engaged people. Microsoft Teams has been there for a long time. Google Meets has been there for a long time. There's been lots of video platforms, and for some reason, probably well known to Zoom, but not maybe well known to Microsoft and Google and others, is when we stopped flying and stopped travelling and stopped going face to face, Zoom was the one that stepped up, and it was more likely because of their value proposition. Right? So they've been working on it for a long time. Like, Zoom is a 5-year-old company, I think. They've been working on this for a long time. Right? The crisis arrived and their growth went like that, but it wasn't because they offer bad service, a bad platform, a bad solution. It's because they offer a good one. And sometimes you just have to be in the right place doing the right time, and then the opportunity arrives. And I think, to me, it's their value proposition that allowed them to take a share price from here right up there. And that didn't just happen, it evolved. They had a vision, and their vision was very, very clear to the founder, who was one of the big, I can't remember where, one of the big IT software companies out of the States, who someone like Cisco, right, who should have had this built in-house and they wouldn't do it, so he said, I'll go and do it myself. Vision, courage, leadership, had a business model, put some people around him to help build them, and you never did this stuff by yourself. And that's kind of the reflection of all of our topics this last 6 months, is someone has a vision, they surround themselves with the right people, they understand what the customers want, even sometimes if the customers aren't clear about it themselves. They understand what the competitors are doing, they see the gap in the market, and they build towards that gap, and then you've got to execute really, really well. And that's kind of what we've been talking about for the last 6 months, and it's not always easy to figure out.
It's not.
But you have to figure it out if you're going to be successful.
You do, and I guess then there's those final couple of pieces around what sort of, takes that value proposition aligned and designed to fulfill a vision, architectured in an appropriate way. There's the marketing, the comms, the way that we actually connect with and engage with the audience. And again, this continues to come up, whether you're talking content marketing, social media, how we are letting, in a really busy, noisy, kind of, crazy 2 a.m. tweet-filled world, how do we let people know consistently, clearly, honestly about who we are and why we might be right for them? If that's not feeding into your sort of planning process right now, again, I'd really encourage you to be spending time on that, right?
Absolutely. I think that's the challenge. It's November 2020. I think those who have survived through this year in a business sense and mentally, physically, emotionally, there's almost, you can see the end of the year coming. From an Australian point of view, Victoria, the situation in Victoria is improving, so we're going to hopefully finish the year on a bit of a positive light, and I'm guessing the majority will be exhausted.
Yes.
Right? And then, fingers crossed, Next year, we've got a better environment to be in, but the world is going to be different.
Yes.
And I think it's that planning that, even though people may feel like they're exhausted and it's too much to do now, I think that planning now to go, how do we then set ourselves up for a good 2021 is really critical, because we know it's not going to be the same as this year. Let's hope it's not the same as this year. And then it comes back, I think, those same themes around leadership, around customers and your competitors, around how do you package up what you do and take it to the market that now has different expectations to this time last year, earlier this year.
And because that can be such an awful lot of stuff to live in one head, maybe it ties into the final sort of theme that I think has continued to bubble out of these conversations, which is who's in your corner. Who have you got around you? Who have you got supporting you, informing you, guiding you, being a context counterpoint to you,
helping pick you up when you're down, all those things.
Asking you the challenging questions, but then helping you find out the next sort of steps. So advisory boards, teams of colleagues around you, leveraging the power of your own team, communities, swarms. What does that sort of collective of humans to so that you're not lying, like we said in a couple of episodes ago, at 3 a.m. looking at the ceiling, feeling like you've got to deal with every single one of these issues in your head by yourself. What are you doing in 2021 to make sure you've got some smart, balanced sort of viewpoints to supplement and support your own, right?
Spot on. That's it, in a nutshell. As easy as that.
Easy as that. All right. Well, because it's not as easy as that, we of course, would love to support you. Part of what James and I do in our work is support leadership teams, business owners, professionals who do carry a lot of this stuff in their own head, and provide that sort of support. We also have a pretty broad and deep network of experienced smart folk. Some of those you've seen through these videos already, who can add some value to you as well. So you just simply need to reach out in the details below. And if you want to come and sit on the deck with this beautiful greenery behind us, or we'll come to yours, please sing out. We'll see if we can add some value. James, as always, thank you for your insights.
Thank you, Troy.
Thanks for joining us on the Advisory Deck.